Hey guys, tonight we are going on a journey. But not to a grand castle or a forgotten battlefield. We're stepping into a much quieter, much more recent past. We're going to 20th century Ireland. A place of green hills and grey skies. But we won't be staying out in the open. We're going behind a very high, very solid wall. Into a place that existed in plain sight, yet remained a secret for generations. It's a story about laundry, sin, and the price of being a woman in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a gentle heads up. The world you're about to enter might not feel like history at all, it might feel in a wigwam close, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to see where you're listening from tonight. Drop your city and the current time in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is damp. That's the first thing you notice. Always. It's a specific kind of Irish dampness that seeps into your bones, clinging to the wool of your sweater. It smells of wet earth, burning peat from the hearth, and the faint, ever-present scent of rain on stone. You pull your collar tighter as you walk down the lane, the gravel crunching under your worn leather shoes. Life here is a rhythm, a predictable and, for the most part, comforting cycle. There's the clink of milk bottles in the morning, the drone of the rosary in the evening, and the Sunday Mass where the whole village gathers, smelling of mothballs and soap. You are just a girl. Maybe you're 16. Maybe you're 20. Maybe you have a quick laugh that your mother says is too loud for a lady. Or perhaps you have a quiet nature, preferring books to dances. You have dreams, of course. They are grand. Not really. Maybe you dream of a new dress, not a hand-me-down from your older sister. Or perhaps you've caught the eye of that boy who works at the butcher's shop, the one with the shy smile, and you imagine walking with him by the canal. These are small, precious hopes you hold close, like smooth stones in your pocket. Your world is framed by the church. This is a fundamental truth of your existence. Post-independence Ireland has woven Catholicism into the very fabric of its identity. The priest isn't just a spiritual guide, he's a figure of immense authority, his opinion holding more weight than a magistrate's in matters of local life. The school you attend, the hospital your grandmother stays in, the very morals that govern your community, they are all shaped and administered by the church. It's a comforting blanket for most, a structure that gives life meaning and order. But you're beginning to feel the scratchiness of its threads. You are taught that your virtue is your greatest treasure, a fragile thing that, once lost, can never be regained. The idea of purity is everywhere, spoken from the pulpit, whispered by the aunties over tea, and enforced by the watchful eyes of the community. You don't think of yourself as a sinner. You go to confession, reciting the same minor infractions as everyone else, losing your temper, having an impure thought, envying your friend's new coat. But there's a new kind of watchfulness in the air, one that feels different, more targeted. This brings us to a lesser known piece of this social puzzle, the lay organizations. You've seen them. The women of the Legion of Mary, moving through the town in pairs. Their expressions sober, their mission to uphold public morality. They don't just pray, they observe, they report. They take note of the girl who talks to boys too freely, the one who wears her skirt a little too short, the one who looks a little too happy in her own skin. They are the unofficial surveillance arm of the moral state, and their judgment can be swift and silent. You felt their gaze linger on you once or twice, and it sends a chill down your spine that has nothing to do with the dumb pair. You are standing at a crossroads, though you don't know it yet. The life you know feels solid, real, unchangeable, but it's built on a precarious foundation. What happens if you stumble? What if you are the victim of gossip, or worse, of something that wasn't your fault but leaves a mark on you anyway? Where do girls like that go? The whispers speak of places, institutions run by nuns for penitent women, charitable places, they say, to help them find their way back to God. Historians to this day are locked in a debate about just how much the average person truly knew about what happened behind the high walls of these Magdalene laundries. Was it a widely accepted open secret? A convenient way for families and parishes to deal with a problem, or did most people genuinely believe the narrative of charity and redemption? Completely unaware of the brutal reality of unpaid labor and imprisonment from where you stand, on your side of the wall, you only know the official story. It's a place for other girls. Fallen girls. It has nothing to do with you. You are a good girl, from a good family. You are safe. The thought is as comforting, and as fragile, as a pane of glass in a coming storm. The feeling of safety is the first thing to go. It doesn't vanish in a flash, but erodes slowly, like a sandcastle against the tide. It begins at the parish dance. The hall is stuffy, smelling of floor wax and sweat and the sweet, cheap perfume the girls wear. A local band is playing a lively reel, and you're laughing, your face flushed from the exertion. The boy from the butcher's shop asks you to dance, and your heart gives a little flutter. His hand is warm and slightly clumsy on your back. You dance 2 songs, maybe 3. You talk about nothing: the weather, his dog, the terrible sermon from last Sunday. It's innocent, a moment of simple, youthful joy. You stay a little later than you should, walking home under a sky full of sharp, cold stars, humming the tune to yourself. The next day, the air in your own home is different. Your mother is quiet, her lips are thin, worried line as she kneads dough on the floured table. She won't meet your eyes. When you walk to the shops, you notice Mrs. O'Connell from across the lane pulling her curtains shut. The whispers start. You don't hear them directly, but you feel them: a change in the social atmosphere, a sudden chill where there was once warmth. At first, you are just confused. What did you do? The answer comes a few days later, with a knock on the door. It's the parish priest. He sits in your family's best chair, the one reserved for important guests, nursing a cup of tea. He speaks in a low, somber voice, not to you, but to your father. He talks of vanity, of carelessness, of a young woman's duty to be modest. He uses the phrase on occasion of sin. Your crime, it turns out, was not an act but a possibility. By laughing too loudly, by dancing with too much abandon, by being too vibrant, too alive, you had created a near occasion of sin for the young man. You had made yourself a temptation. You tried to speak, to defend yourself, but we only danced. You say, your voice small. The priest talks at you then. A look of weary disappointment that feels worse than anger. It's a look that says you don't even comprehend the depth of your own failing. It is in this moment that you begin to understand the terrifyingly broad definition of a fallen woman. It isn't just about the girls who are unmarried and pregnant, though they are the most obvious targets. It's a category that can expand to fit almost anyone. A girl who is the victim of assault is considered soiled, her purity destroyed, making her a candidate. A girl who is simply too beautiful, attracting what is deemed the wrong kind of attention, can be seen as a moral hazard. Orphans, with no family to protect or vouch for them, are especially vulnerable, easily swept into the system. It's a net designed to catch anyone who deviates from the narrow, prescribed path of female behavior. And here we come to a particularly cruel piece of logic. A niche bit of theology that was used to justify this. The church taught the concept of avoiding the proximate occasion of sin. This meant it wasn't enough to not sin yourself, you had a duty to not even get close to a situation where a sin might be committed, by you or by someone else. Your joy at the dance, your vibrant energy, this was seen as creating a scenario where that boy might have impure thoughts. In the eyes of this system, you are responsible not only for your own soul, but for the soul of every man who looks at you. You are not a person, you are a potential hazard that must be managed. Your body itself, with its natural vitality, is the source of the problem. Your father, a man you've always seen as strong, just sits there, his head bowed. He is caught between his love for you and the immense, unassailable power of the priest. To defy the church would be to risk social and even economic ruin for the entire family. Who would hire him, who would sell to them, who would marry his other children? The pressure is immense. And this is where historians still argue to what extent was this system a genuine, if terribly misguided, attempt at moral correction versus a convenient, profitable social cleansing mechanism. Some argue that the founders and administrators truly believed they were saving souls from eternal damnation. Others point to the vast profits generated by these laundries, which operated as commercial enterprises with an unpaid, captive workforce, and argue that the moralizing was a convenient cover for what was essentially a form of slave labor. As you sit there, watching the priest's impassive face, you can't help but wonder if your soul is just a good excuse. The decision is made. It is not presented as a punishment, but as a kindness, a retreat. You will be sent away for a little while, to a place run by good, holy women, a place where you can pray, reflect on your behavior, and be protected from the world, and more importantly, from yourself. They tell you it will only be for a few months, maybe a year, just long enough to settle down and learn some humility. You don't scream, you don't cry. A strange numbness settles over you. You are being erased from your own life, and everyone is nodding, agreeing that it's for the best. The world you knew just yesterday, the boy with the shy smile, the walk home under the stars, the simple comfort of your own bed, it all feels a million miles away now. A door has been closed, and you haven't even reached the wall yet. There is no trial, there is no judge, no joy, no legal document that outlines your sentence. Your fate is sealed over a cup of tea in your own front parlor. The decision, when it's framed as final, comes from your own father. His voice is heavy, and he doesn't look at you as he says the words, "It's for the best. The sisters will take good care of you." The phrase "take care of you" hangs in the air, suddenly sounding less like a promise of comfort and more like a term for disposal. Your mother packs a small bag for you, a spare dress, a brush, your prayer book. She cries silently, her tears falling onto the worn fabric of your clothes. Her sorrow is real. You know it is, but it is powerless. It is the grief of the helpless. You ask when you'll be back. Soon, they say, when you've had time to reflect. But soon is a word without meaning, a placating noise. You are now a problem, a source of shame that must be managed. The family's reputation, the standing in the tight-knit community, is paramount. Your individual life, your feelings, your future, these are secondary to the collective honor of the family name. The neighbors are already watching, whispering. Keeping you here would be a constant, visible reminder of the priest's disapproval. Sending you away is the only way to cauterize the social wound. The next morning, before the sun is fully up, a car pulls up outside your house. This itself is an event. Cars are a rarity in your village, a symbol of wealth or official business. This one is a drab black, unremarkable, but its presence feels momentous. Final, your brother, who usually teases you relentlessly, just stands by the door, his face pale, unable to speak. He shoves a small, misshapen apple into your hand as you leave, a clumsy, silent gesture of farewell. The betrayal you feel isn't sharp and hot, like anger. It's a cold, creeping ache. It's the realization that the people who were supposed to protect you are the very ones delivering you into the unknown. They are sacrificing you for the sake of peace, for their own survival in the rigid social ecosystem of the parish. The journey is quiet. You sit in the back of the car next to a woman you've never seen before, a stern-faced member of a lay religious sodality. She doesn't speak to you, only prays quietly on her rosary beads, the faint clicking a maddening rhythm in the silence. You look out the window as your village disappears. You see the spire of the church, the roof of your school, the bridge where you once sat with a friend, sharing secrets. Each landmark is a piece of your life being stripped away. You are becoming a ghost in your own story. This method of committal was terrifyingly informal and varied wildly. Some women were brought by family members. Others were transferred directly from state-run orphanages or reformatory schools upon reaching a certain age. Their transition into unpaid labor seamless. Sometimes, a priest would simply arrange for the collection. There are documented cases of girls being tricked, told they were going to a new job or to visit a relative, only to find themselves at the gates of a laundry. And here's a particularly strange and chilling detail: some women committed themselves. In a society with absolutely no social safety net for unmarried mothers or destitute women, a Magdalene laundry, with its promise of a roof and meager food, could seem like the only option. A desperate choice made in the face of starvation and total social ostracism. They walked through the gates willingly, unaware that the choice to enter was the last real choice they would ever make. The debate among historians about the family's role is complex and painful. Was it pure cruelty, or was it a reflection of a society where people, particularly the poor, had incredibly limited agency? For many families, the combination of profound religious belief, immense social pressure, and a lack of any alternative created a perfect storm. They may have genuinely believed that sending a daughter away was the only way to save her soul and preserve the rest of the family. They were, in their own way, victims of the same oppressive system, forced to become its enforcers. It's a narrative that complicates blame, turning it from a simple story of villains and victims into a much more troubling portrait of a society complicit in its own cruelty. As the car eats up the miles, the landscape changes from familiar fields to the grey, anonymous streets of a city. You've never been to a city this large before. It's loud and sprawling and intimidating. And then you see it. It's dull, made of dark stone, and topped with shards of broken glass that glint in the weak sunlight. It looks like a prison. The car slows and turns through a heavy iron gate, which grinds shut behind you with a dreadful, echoing clang. The sound is absolute. It is the sound of a lock turning, the sound of a chapter ending. You are inside now. The world outside, the brother with the apple, the mother with her tears, the boy at the dance, it all ceases to exist. There is only the imposing stone building in front of you and the silence of the courtyard. A silence far deeper and more ominous than the one in the car. You clutch the small bag your mother packed, the last tangible piece of your old life. It feels flimsy, inadequate. The building that stands before you is a jarring mix of grandeur and menace. It might have once been a stately home, or perhaps it was built specifically for this purpose. Its architecture a deliberate statement of imposing piety. There are arched windows, a heavy oak door, and a stone cross carved above the entrance. It is meant to look like a place of sanctuary, a house of God, but the windows are grimy. The stone is dark with age and city soot, and the whole place exudes an aura of profound, suffocating sadness. There are no flowers in the garden, only neatly raked gravel and a few severe, unyielding shrubs. A nun opens the door. She is a silhouette in a black habit, her face framed by a stiff, white wimple that completely hides her hair. Her expression is neutral, impassive, as if she has performed this exact task 1,000 times. She doesn't smile or offer a word of welcome. She simply beckons you inside. The air inside is cold, colder than the courtyard, and it carries a strange, new smell. It's a chemical sharpness. The scent of industrial strength soap and bleach, overlaid with the humid, heavy smell of steam. It's the smell of the work that awaits you. You are laid down alone. Echoing corridor. The floors are scrubbed bare, and the only sounds are the swish of the nun's habit and the click of her rosary beads against her belt. There are crucifixes on the walls, and stern-faced portraits of saints whose eyes seem to follow you with silent judgment. This is not a home. This is an institution. You feel yourself shrinking, becoming smaller with every step. The nun leads you into a small, bare office. Another, older nun sits behind a large wooden desk. This is the Reverend Mother. Her authority is absolute, radiating from her like a chill. She doesn't ask you to sit. She takes the small bag of your belongings your mother packed and empties it onto the desk. Your dress, your brush, Your prayer book, they look pathetic and worldly in this stark, ascetic space. She picks up your prayer book, flips through it, and sets it aside. She doesn't ask your name. She already has it, written on a piece of paper on her desk. Your old life has been reduced to a single line in a ledger. She speaks, her voice crisp and devoid of emotion. You are here to repent for your sins. You will work. You will pray, and you will obey, through mortification of the flesh. You will cleanse your soul. Do you understand? You nod, unable to speak. The word mortification hangs in the air. A word you've heard in sermons but never truly understood. You are beginning to understand it now. It means the deliberate subjugation of your body, its desires, its very identity, for the sake of spiritual purification. This is the moment of your formal induction into a system that historians refer to as an apparatus of control, existing in a strange legal grey area. The Magdalene laundries were not, technically, state prisons. They were privately owned and operated by religious orders. Yet, the state was deeply complicit. Police would return escapees. Courts would sentence petty female offenders to serve time in them. Government departments, the army, and even the presidential residence were major clients, sending their tons of laundry to be cleaned by this captive workforce. This public-private partnership created a powerful and inescapable trap. A girl had no legal recourse. She wasn't a prisoner, so she had no prisoner's rights. She wasn't an employee, so she had no workers' rights. She was a penitent, a unique category of non-person, stripped of all legal identity and protection. And here we find a strange, almost unbelievable fact about these institutions, their sheer longevity and scale. The first Magdalene Asylum in Ireland opened in 1765. The very last one didn't close its doors until 1996, for over 200 years. This system operated. It's a staggering timeline, stretching from the era of horse-drawn carriages to the age of the internet. It is a piece of the 18th century that survived, bizarrely, into the modern world. Tens of thousands of women are estimated to have passed through their doors. The exact number is unknown, a point of ongoing academic research and debate, because the religious orders that ran them have been notoriously secretive with their records. Many records were conveniently lost or destroyed, making a full accounting of the lives they consumed nearly impossible. The Reverend Mother slides a form across the desk. It's a contract, of sorts. By signing it, you voluntarily commit yourself to the care of the sisters for an indefinite period. The language is couched in terms of spiritual welfare, but its effect is total surrender. You sign it. Your hand is trembling so much you can barely form the letters of your own name. It's the last time that name will hold any meaning here. With the paperwork done, the transaction is complete. You have been processed. You are now an inmate of the laundry. The first nun leads you out of the office, taking your small bag with her. Your worldly possessions are now the property of the institution. You walk down another corridor, deeper into the building. The smell of bleach and steam grows stronger. You can hear a low, rhythmic thumping sound, the heartbeat of a great, hidden machine. You are entering the engine room of this place. The reason for its existence. The high walls outside weren't just built to keep you in. They were built to hide what you are about to become: an unpaid, invisible worker in a highly profitable, church-run industrial enterprise. The next stage of your erasure begins in a small, cold room with a stoned floor. The nun who brought you here points to a rough wooden stool. Take off your clothes, she commands, her voice flat. There is no privacy, no modesty. You hesitate for a second. A flicker of your own self, your innate sense of dignity, flaring up. But the nun's stare is hard and unyielding. It extinguishes that flicker instantly. Slowly, you undress. Your movements stiff and clumsy in the chilling air. Your dress, the one you wore from home, feels like a piece of a forgotten life as you fold it. It's the last connection to the girl you were. The nun takes it from you without a word and places it in a bin with other discarded garments. In its place, She hands you the uniform. It's made of coarse, heavy, scratchy fabric. A drab, shapeless, shift the color of dishwater. There is nothing remotely feminine or individual about it. It is designed to conceal, to obscure the body, to make you anonymous. You put it on. The rough material chafes your skin. It smells faintly of the same chemical soap that permeates the entire building. Along with the uniform, you are given thick, ugly stockings and heavy, clad-dish shoes that don't quite fit. You look down at yourself. The transformation is startling. You are no longer you. You are an inmate, a penitent, a Magdalene. Then comes the most significant act of depersonalization. The nun looks at you, not as a person, but as an object to be catalogued. From this day on, she says, you will be known as Cecilia. Or maybe it's Martha, or Agnes. It's a saint's name, chosen at random. Your own name, the one your parents gave you, the one your friends called out across the schoolyard, is now forbidden. To use it is an act of defiance, a sin of pride. You are expected to forget it, to bury it. This practice of assigning new names was a powerful psychological tool. It severed the final link to a woman's past and her identity. A name is the first gift you receive, the anchor of your sense of self. To have it taken away is to be told that your previous existence, your family, your entire history, is irrelevant. You are being reborn into this new, penitential life, and your old self is meant to die. This is why, for years after the Laundries closed, tracking down records for specific women was so difficult for researchers and family members. A woman might have entered as Mary Murphy, but lived and died within the walls as Sister Joseph, her original identity lost in deliberately obscured records. You are now Cecilia. You try the name out in your head. It feels alien, like a badly fitting coat. The nun leads you from the changing room into a large, cold dormitory. Dozens of identical lion-framed beds are lined up in stark, unforgetting rows. Each bed has a thin, lumpy mattress, a single grey blanket, and a small wooden locker beside it. There are no pictures on the walls, no curtains on the windows, no personal touches of any kind. This is not a place for comfort or rest, it is a place for warehousing bodies. The nun points to an empty bed. This is yours. You are shown how to make it. The corners of the blanket to be folded with military precision. Any deviation is a fault, a sign of a disorderly mind. This forced uniformity under usura of individuality is a classic feature of what sociologists call a total institution, a concept developed by Irving Goffman. He studied places like prisons, mental asylums, and monasteries. These are self-contained worlds that control every aspect of an individual's life, breaking down their civilian identity and rebuilding it according to the institution's rules. The surrender of personal possessions, the uniform, the new name, the tightly controlled schedule, these are all textbook techniques for systematically dismantling a person's sense of self-worth and autonomy. You are no longer a daughter, a friend, a girl with a crush. You are an inmate, interchangeable with the woman in the next bed. And there's a strange, lesser-known detail about the dormitories in some of these institutions: the obsession with ventilation. Based on misguided 19th century ideas about me, as the belief that disease was spread by bad air, the windows were often left open year-round. Even in the depths of the Irish winter, this was framed as a way to promote health and piety by discouraging softness. But, in reality, it was a form of physical hardship. The women were perpetually cold, the damp chill seeping into their bones, leading to chronic respiratory illnesses. It was another form of that mortification of the flesh the Reverend Mother spoke of. Historians and sociologists still debate the psychological motivations behind this extreme level of depersonalization. Was it a conscious, calculated strategy to break the women's spirits and ensure their compliance, or was it the result of an institutional mindset, a bureaucratic and religious ideology that had evolved over decades and saw these women not as individuals to be cared for, But as a homogeneous group of sinners to be processed and managed, the truth likely lies in a disturbing combination of both. For the nuns running the laundry, dehumanizing the inmates may have been a necessary coping mechanism, allowing them to carry out their duties without being overwhelmed by the cruelty of the system they were perpetuating. You stand by your assigned bed, in your scratchy uniform. Your old clothes are gone. Your name is gone. You look at the rows of other women, some young like you, some old and grey, their faces etched with a permanent exhaustion. They move like ghosts, their expressions vacant. You try to catch someone's eye, looking for a sign of solidarity, a flicker of recognition, but their gazes slide past you. They have learned not to see. You are invisible, a new cog in an old machine, and you realize with a sickening finality that you haven't just been brought to a new place. You have been turned into a new person, or rather, a non-person. Your name is gone, and you fear your soul is next. The bell rings before dawn. It's a harsh, clanging sound that rips you from a shallow, uneasy sleep. There is no gentle waking here. The dormitory lights flash on, stark and unforgiving. You have only minutes to get dressed in the cold dark, make your bed with the required sharp corners, and line up for morning mass. The chapel is ornate but frigid, the air thick with incense and the drone of Latin prayers you barely understand. You kneel on the hard wooden kneeler, your stomach empty, your head light. The sermon is always the same theme: sin, shame, shame, redemption through suffering. It's a message hammered into you, day after day. After mass, there's breakfast. You file into a long refectory and sit on a backless bench at a bare wooden table. Breakfast is a bowl of thin, watery porridge, or stirabout, and a mug of weak tea. There is no conversation. You eat in silence, your eyes fixed on the bowl in front of you. To speak is a punishable offense. The only sound is the scraping of spoons against ceramic. Then, the bell rings again. It is time for work. You are led, along with the other new girls, into the heart of the institution, the laundry. The moment the door opens, you are hit by a wall of sensory overload. It's a vast, cavernous space, like the belly of some great beast. The air is thick with steam, so dense it's hard to see across the room. It clings to your skin, your hair, your uniform, making everything instantly dull. The heat is suffocating, a stark contrast to the perpetual cold of the dormitory, and the noise is overwhelming. It's a constant, deafening cacophony, the rhythmic churning and sloshing of colossal washing machines, the hiss of steam pipes, the roar of the industrial dryers, and the shouts of the nuns directing the work. Your first job is in the sorting room. Mountains of dirty laundry are piled on the floor, a foul-smelling testament to the outside world. The linens come from everywhere: hospitals, hotels, wealthy households, even the army. You have to sort through it all, separating whites from colors, wools from cottons. Your hands, unaccustomed to such work, are soon rough from handling the coarse, soiled fabrics. You find things in the pockets: a crumpled cinema ticket, a love letter, a single coin. Each item is a painful reminder of the world you've lost. You are ordered to put them in a separate bin. They will be claimed by the convent. Then, you are moved to the washhouse itself. This is where the real mortification begins. You stand at a huge, deep concrete sink, filled with near-boiling water and caustic, lye-based soap that stings your eyes and burns your skin. Your job is to scrub the most heavily stained items by hand on a ridged washboard before they go into the machines. The stains are intermittent, unpleasant blood, sweat, grime. You are literally washing the dirty linen of the society that has cast you out. The irony is so bitter it feels like bile in your throat. Your arms ache. Your back screams in protest. The steam plasters your hair to your face, and sweat drips down your back. But there is no relief. This is the central, brutal reality of the Magdalene laundry. It wasn't just a prison, it was a factory. The religious narrative of penitence was built upon a foundation of industrial scale, unpaid labor. These institutions were highly profitable commercial enterprises. They secured lucrative contracts with state bodies and private businesses because they could drastically undercut commercial laundries, thanks to their free, captive workforce. The women worked 10 to 12-hour days, 6 days a week, in these appalling conditions, with no wages, no holidays, and no hope of release. The profits they generated went directly to the religious orders, funding their convents, schools, and other operations. You are not just a penitent, you are an asset. Your physical suffering is generating wealth. There's a specific, rather grim piece of laundry technology that defined this experience for many the box mangle. This was a fearsome piece of Victorian-era equipment used for pressing large, flat items like sheets. It consisted of a massive, heavy wooden box filled with stones, which was rolled back and forth over wooden rollers. It was incredibly dangerous to operate, requiring immense physical strength, and accidents were common: crushed fingers, broken limbs, even in the mid-20th century, when more modern steam presses were available. Many laundries kept these archaic, labor-intensive machines in use. Why historians debate this. Was it thriftiness, an unwillingness to invest in new equipment for an unpaid workforce, or was it a deliberate choice? The difficult, punishing nature of the work itself seen as part of the penitential process. Either way, for the women forced to operate them, they were instruments of torture. You watch the older women, the ones who have been here for years, or even decades. They move with a resigned, mechanical efficiency. Their hands are red, swollen, and misshapen from the constant exposure to hot water and harsh chemicals. Their faces are blank, their eyes distant. They have learned to dissociate, to separate their minds from the pain of their bodies. They are surviving. You wonder if you will ever learn to do the same. By the end of the first day, your body is screaming. Your hands are blistered and bleeding. Your back feels like it might break. You are coated in a film of sweat and grime and the ever-present smell of bleach. You stumble back to the refectory for a supper of thin soup and dry bread, eaten in the same enforced silence. Then, evening prayers. Finally, the bell for bed. You collapse onto your thin mattress, but sleep doesn't come easily. The noise of the laundry still rings in your ears. The image of the endless piles of dirty linen is burned into your mind. You are Cecilia, and this is your life now. The work, the bells, the silence, an endless, repeating cycle designed to grind you down, to wash you away, until nothing of your old self remains. After a few weeks, the initial shock begins to fade, replaced by a dull, aching routine. You learn the rhythms of the laundry, the hierarchy of the work. You realize that even in this pit of communal misery, there is a pecking order. Your first assignment, sorting the foul linens, was the lowest rung. It was the job for the newest, most untrusted girls, as you prove your obedience and diligence through sheer exhaustion. You are slowly moved to different stations. Each move is a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in status. From the initial sorting and the brutal hand scrubbing at the sinks, you might be promoted to operating the washing machines themselves. These are not the automated appliances you might imagine. They are huge, industrial tumblers, hydro extractors, that have to be loaded and unloaded by hand with heavy, sopping wet sheets. The doors are heavy, the controls are rudimentary, and you learn quickly which machines have quirks, which ones leak, which ones spin too violently. It's physically demanding, but it's a step up from having your hands perpetually submerged in caustic water. The next level up is the drying room, or the hot press. Here, the damp laundry is fed through enormous, heated rollers called calendars, or pressed with heavy, industrial steam irons. The heat in this section is even more intense than in the washhouse. A dry, baking heat that makes it hard to breathe. Your job is to guide the sheets in perfectly straight, avoiding creases. A single mistake, a moment of inattention, could result in a nasty burn from the hot metal. But the women who work here are considered more skilled, more trusted. The pinnacle of the laundry hierarchy, the most coveted position, is in the finishing room. This is where the delicate work is done. Mending torn items, starching the collars of priests' vestments, meticulously folding, unpacking the crisp, clean linen for delivery. This work requires dexterity and focus. It's less physically brutal than the wash house, and it takes place in a quieter, less chaotic part of the building. The women here are the long-timers, the ones who have been institutionalized for decades. Their spirits so thoroughly broken that they are considered completely reliable. They hold a quiet authority over the other inmates, sometimes acting as unofficial for women. Their silent disapproval as potent as a nun's verbal reprimand. You look at them with a mixture of awe and terror. To get to their position, you have to survive years, decades, of this life. You have to become one of them. This internal hierarchy served a crucial purpose for the nuns. By creating these small, almost meaningless distinctions in labor, they fostered an environment of competition rather than solidarity. The hope of moving from the sinks to the folders was a powerful incentive for compliance. It encouraged the women to work harder and to police each other, reporting infractions to the nuns in the hope of gaining favor. It was a classic divide and conquer strategy, ensuring the large population of inmates remained manageable for the small number of supervising nuns. Herein lies a curious and often overlooked aspect of the laundry's operation specialization. While the main business was linen, some laundries developed niche market. One of the most famous was the finishing of altar cloths and priests' vestments for churches across the country and even abroad. This required highly specialized skills in lace making and embroidery. A small, select group of penitents would be trained in this delicate, intricate work. This is a strange paradox inside a place designed to punish and degrade women. A pocket of high-level, traditional female artisanship was preserved and exploited. These women produced beautiful, delicate objects of sacred art, even as their own lives were devoid of any beauty or sanctity. Their anonymous, unpaid labor adorned the very altars of the institution that condemned them. The academic debate around this labor structure is fascinating. Some historians, focusing on a more economic interpretation, argue that this division of labor was purely a matter of industrial efficiency. You put your most compliant and skilled workers on the most valuable tasks to maximize output and quality, just like in any other factory. However, other scholars, taking a more sociological or psychological approach, argue that the hierarchy was primarily a tool of social control. They contend that its inefficiency keeping women at brutally hard tasks for years before promoting them proves that its main purpose wasn't profit, but punishment in the breaking of the will. The very structure of the work was designed to be part of the penitential experience. You are still far from the finishing room. You are now working the hydro extractors. Your arms and back constantly strained from hauling the wet, heavy loads. The noise is a constant companion. You learn to read the moods of the supervising nun by the set of her jaw, the way she holds her hands. You learn which older women might offer a silent gesture of help, a quick hand to lift a heavy basket, and which ones will watch you struggle without a flicker of expression. You are learning the unspoken rules of survival. You dream of the day your hands are no longer raw, the day you are trusted with a needle and thread instead of a load of wet sheets. It's a small, pathetic hope, but right now, it's the only one you have. It's a rung on a ladder you never wanted to climb, in a world you would give anything to leave. The loudest thing in the laundry is the silence. This is a contradiction you learn to live with. The machinery roars, the steam hisses. The heavy carts rumble across the concrete floors, but the human voice is absent. A rule of absolute silence is enforced at almost all times. During work, during meals, in the dormitory. To speak without permission is a serious infraction, met with swift punishment. Punishments vary depending on the supervising nun and the nature of the crime. It could be the denial of a meal to begin with. Its absence keenly felt. It could be extra work. Being forced to scrub floors on your knees after a grueling 12-hour shift in the laundry. For more serious offenses, like answering back or showing pride. The punishment could be solitary confinement in a small, dark room for a day or more. Humiliation is also a key tool. A woman might be forced to kneel in the center of the refectory during meals, or have her hair crudely cut off in front of the others. The goal is not just to punish the individual, but to make an example of her, to reinforce the futility of resistance for everyone else. So you learn a new language. It's a language of the eyes, of small, fleeting gestures, of shared glances that last only a second. In the deafening noise of the washhouse, a subtle nod from an older woman can warn you that a supervising nun is approaching. A quick, sympathetic glance can be a lifeline when your arms are trembling with fatigue. You learn to communicate volumes with a slight shrug or raised eyebrow. This silent communication is a tiny act of rebellion, a way of reclaiming a sliver of humanity in a system designed to strip it away. It's dangerous, of course. To be caught is to be punished. But it's a risk you and the other women take. A small conspiracy of looks that keeps you from dissolving completely into the institutional grey. This enforced silence was a cornerstone of the psychological control within the Laundries. It prevented the formation of friendships and alliances that could lead to organized dissent. It isolated each woman in her own private misery, making her feel completely alone even when surrounded by hundreds of others. It also amplified the power of the nuns. When the only voices heard are those giving orders or leading prayers, those voices take on an almost divine authority. The silence creates a vacuum that is filled by the institution's ideology. However, there were moments and places where the silence was broken. In the roar of the laundry, with a nun at the other end of the vast room. Two women working side by side might risk a few whispered words, their conversation snatched in fragments, hidden by the noise of a churning machine. My hands are cracked again. Did you see the new girl so young? I heard they're getting a contract from the hospital. These were not conversations about escape or rebellion. They were small, mundane exchanges, but they were vital. They were affirmations that you still existed, that there was another person here who saw you as a fellow human being. This brings us to a peculiar and little discussed aspect of the Laundries soundscape, the singing. While speech was forbidden, the nuns often encouraged the women to sing hymns as they were. On the surface, this seems like a pious activity, but it served a dual purpose. The rhythm of the hymns helped to pace the manual labor, turning the women into a synchronized, more efficient workforce. More subtly, it filled their minds with religious doctrine, crowding out rebellious or sorrowful thoughts. You might spend hours scrubbing sheets to the tune of a hymn about Mary Magdalene, the fallen woman who washed Christ's feet with her tears. The message was relentless: you are her, and this work is your penance. The historical debate on this point revolves around women's agency. Did they passively accept this indoctrination through song, or did they find ways to subvert it? Survivor testimonies offer a complex picture. Some recall finding genuine comfort in the hymns, a familiar ritual in a terrifying world. Others remember singing the holy words while their minds were filled with curses and fantasies of escape. There are even accounts of women subtly changing the lyrics to well-known songs, turning a pious hymn into a secret lament or a coded complaint, a practice that, if discovered, would be severely punished. It was a small, almost invisible form of cultural resistance. You learn to live in your head. Since you cannot speak, your mind becomes your only refuge. As you go through the motions of your work, scrubbing, lifting, folding, you retreat into your memories. You replay every detail of your old life, the feel of a soft blanket, the taste of your mother's soda bread, the sound of your own name. These memories are precious, but they are also painful. They are a constant reminder of everything you have lost. Sometimes, to survive the moment, you have to force yourself to stop remembering. You focus only on the task at hand, the stain on the sheet, the rhythm of the machine, the heat from the press. You try to make your mind as blank as the faces of the long-term inmates. You are becoming adept at the silent language. You know that a slight downward turn of another woman's lips means she is in pain. You know a quick flick of the eyes towards the door is a warning. You and the woman next to you have developed a tiny, secret ritual. Each day, You manage to pass a single, clean button back and forth. A smooth, forbidden object, hidden in the palm of your hand. It's a completely meaningless gesture. But in this world of enforced silence, it's a conversation. It says, I see you. You are still here. I am still here. It's a flicker of light in the overwhelming, roaring quiet. The rhythm of your life is dictated not by the sun or the seasons, but by bells and prayers. The day is bookended by the chapel. You begin in the cold, pre-dawn gloom, kneeling, and you end there in the evening, exhausted, before being marched back to the dormitory. Religion is not a comfort here, it is an instrument. It is the framework upon which your entire existence is built, the justification for your confinement and your labor. The daily mass, the mandatory rosaries, the frequent confessions, they all revolve around a single, powerful theme: your inherent sinfulness. The story of Mary Magdalene, the patron saint of these institutions, is told and retold, but the version you hear is not one of a beloved follower of Christ. It is a simplified, weaponized version. She is the ultimate fallen woman, the sinner, whose only path to redemption was through weeping, humility, and service. The implication is clear: you are all Magdalenes. Your presence here is proof of your fallen state, and this life of hard labor and prayer is your only hope of scrubbing the stain from your soul. You are required to go to confession regularly, kneeling in a dark wooden box and whispering your sins through a screen to a priest. But what can you confess? Your real crime, the one you were condemned for, is not something you can repent for because you never truly committed it. So you invent small sins. I had a proud thought. Father, I was lazy in my work. Father, I spoke to another girl. Father, the confession is not about forgiveness, it's a performance of penitence. It is a ritual of humiliation designed to reinforce your status as a sinner in need of correction. You say the words you are expected to say, receive your penance, usually a set number of Hail Marys, and the cycle continues. The prayers are constant, woven into the fabric of the day. You recite the Angelus at noon, your work stopping for a few brief moments. You might sing hymns in the laundry, but the piety feels hollow, oppressive. It's a tool to fill every moment, to prevent unsanctioned thoughts or conversations. The crucifixes that hang on every wall seem to watch you not with compassion, but with accusation. The statues of the Virgin Mary, a symbol of ultimate female purity, serve as a constant, silent rebuke to your fallen in a place that feels like the very opposite of sacred. The cold from the stone floor seeps into your knees, a familiar, dumb ache. It is the feeling of prayer in the Magdalene laundry. Your body has a new calendar, one measured in hunger. The day is punctuated by the meager meals that do little more than keep you upright and able to work. You are in a constant state of low-level starvation. Food, you learn quickly, is not for nourishment. It is another lever of control, a tool for discipline, and a constant reminder of your lowly status. Breakfast is always the same: a scoop of lumpy, unseasoned porridge, the stirabout, made with water, not milk. Sometimes it's thin and watery, other times it's a thick, gluey paste. It is served in a chipped enamel bowl. Lunch, the main meal of the day, is usually a thin, greasy soup with a few sad-looking vegetables floating in it, accompanied by a slice of dry, dense bread. On a good day, there might be a potato. Supper is often just bread and weak tea, or whatever leftovers remained from lunch. The food is bland, repetitive, and calculated to be the bare minimum required for a body performing hard manual labor. You eat in the refectory, a long, cold hole, in enforced silence. The nuns patrol the aisles between the tables, watching to make sure no one is talking, no one is sharing, no one is saving a crust of bread for later. To be caught hiding food is a serious offense, implying a lack of trust in the convent's provision and a sinful attachment to worldly comforts. The punishment is swift: the confiscated food is thrown out in front of you, and you are denied your next meal entirely. You learn to eat quickly, mechanically, without tasting. The hunger is a constant, dull ache in your stomach that makes you awake, light-headed. You see its effects all around you. The women are thin, their skin sallow, their eyes lacking luster. The perpetual hunger contributes to the atmosphere of lethargy and despair. It's hard to harbor rebellious thoughts when your entire being is consumed with the simple, animal craving for more food. This use of food as a means of control is a classic tactic in total institutions. By controlling the most basic biological need, the institution asserts its total power over the individual. Good behavior might be rewarded with a slightly larger portion or a rare piece of fruit. Bad behavior is punished by withholding food. It creates a direct, visceral link between obedience and survival. You are being retrained, like an animal, to respond to the most basic system of reward and punishment. And now for a detail that is both bizarre and deeply revealing about the psychology of these places: the feast days. On major religious holidays, Christmas, Easter, the feast day of the convent's patron saint, the routine would be broken. The women would be given a special meal. This might consist of a piece of tough, boiled meat, a slice of cake, or even a small glass of lemonade. To you, after months of near starvation, this food tastes like the most exquisite delicacy you have ever known. The nuns would present this as a great act of Christian charity, a sign of their benevolent care. But the effect was more insidious. These rare moments of relative plenty served to highlight your daily deprivation. They were a reminder of what the outside world had, and what you did not. They were also designed to inspire gratitude, to make you feel thankful to your captors for this small crumb of kindness. It was a calculated performance of generosity that only reinforced the power dynamic. The debate among historians and nutritionists who have studied the laundry records is about the intention behind the diet. Was the pure quality of the food simply a matter of economics? Were the convents, despite their profit, just being frugal, spending as little as possible on the upkeep of the inmates? Or was the nature of the diet its blandness, its monotony, its lack of nourishment, a deliberate part of the penitential system? Many argue the latter. They point to the fact that the diet was specifically designed to be unpleasing. It was part of the mortification of the flesh, to deny the body pleasure. Even the simple pleasure of a tasty meal was to help purify the soul. The bad food was an extension of the theology. You start to have fantasies about food, not grand banquets, but simple things: a ripe apple, a glass of fresh milk, a thick slice of bread with butter and jam. These thoughts are a form of torture, but you can't stop them. You can close your eyes and almost taste them. In the dormitory at night, you can sometimes hear the stomachs of the other women rumbling in the darkness, a quiet, collective symphony of hunger. One day, while sorting the laundry from a wealthy hotel, you find a half-eaten biscuit trapped in a napkin in a man's coat pocket. It's a plain digested biscuit, slightly crumbled. Your heart pounds. You look around. No one is watching. Your hands trembling. You slip it into the pocket of your uniform. All afternoon, you are consumed with the secret. The fear of being caught is immense, but the desire for the biscuit is overwhelming. Later, in the brief, unobtrusive moment in the latrine, you eat it. You devour it in 3 quick bites, not even tasting it, terrified of being discovered. The crumbs are rough in your throat. It's gone in seconds. For a fleeting moment, the taste of sugar and wheat is an explosion in your mouth. Then, it's over. The hunger in your stomach is still there. But for a moment, you cheated the system. You had something that was yours. It was a tiny, pathetic victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. And in this place, you learn to live on such victories. You've been here long enough now to see the trucks. They come and go through the big iron gates. Their engines a low rumble that briefly interrupts the rhythmic churning of the laundry. Some trucks deliver massive bags of raw materials: soap, flakes, starch, coal for the boilers. Others haul away the finished product: crisp, perfectly folded linens, packed in wicker baskets or brown paper parcels, ready for delivery. It's a constant, professional flow of goods. And that's when a new understanding begins to dawn on you. A truth that cuts through the religious fog of sin and penance. This isn't just a convent. This isn't just a refuge. This is a business. A very big business. You see the evidence everywhere. The sheer volume of laundry is staggering. You wash the sheets from local hotels, the tablecloths from expensive restaurants, the uniforms of the National Police Force, the doctor's coats from the maternity hospital, the priest's vestments from half the diocese in the country. You are part of a vast, hidden commercial enterprise. And you and the hundreds of other women are its engine. Your penitence is their profit margin. The nuns are not just spiritual guardians, they are factory for women and business managers. You see the Reverend Mother in her office, poring over ledgers and accounts. You see the nuns checking the outgoing orders. Their eyes sharp, ensuring the quality of the work. They are running a competitive commercial laundry, and their greatest competitive advantage is you. Your labor costs them nothing but the price of thin porridge and a threadbare blanket. You have no salary, no contract, no right. You are a slave, but a slave whose bondage is cloaked in the respectable language of charity and redemption. This realization is a slow, creeping poison. It changes how you see everything. The endless work is not just to purify your soul, it's to fulfill a contract. The harsh discipline is not just to instill humility, it's to maintain productivity. The high walls are not just to protect you from worldly temptation, they are to secure a captive workforce. The whole system, you realize, is a masterpiece of cynical genius. It has found a way to monetize shame. This brings us to one of the most contentious and hidden aspects of the laundries, their finances. For decades, the religious orders that ran these institutions maintained absolute secrecy over their accounts. They were registered as charities, which meant they were exempt from taxes and public scrutiny. It was only after the laundries closed and state inquiries began that the sheer scale of their profitability started to come to light. The numbers are hard to pin down, but it's clear they generated immense wealth. This wealth was used to buy property, to fund the expansion of the religious orders, and to run their other operations, like schools and hospitals, which, in turn, often provided a steady stream of future penitents from their orphanages or homes for unmarried mothers. A particularly curious and telling detail is the existence of laundromarks, to keep track of the thousands of items from different clients. Each institution had its own unique marking system. Sometimes it was a code embroidered in a corner with colored thread, other times it was a stamp applied with indelible ink. For collectors and historians today, these marks are like a form of industrial archaeology. You can look at a vintage Irish linen sheet, find a small, discreet mark like S. Bell Street, Mary's Laundry, and know that it passed through the raw, chapped hands of a woman like you. These marks are the silent, anonymous signatures of the women who were denied their own names. The academic debate here is fierce, and it centers on the question of intent versus outcome. Did the religious order set out with the cynical intention of creating a slave labor empire, or did they start with a religious mission that, over time, morphed into a commercial enterprise? Perhaps without them even fully acknowledging the transition, some scholars argue for the banality of evil thesis that the nuns were simply administrators, caught in an institutional logic that prioritized financial stability and growth, gradually losing sight of the humanity of the women in their charge. Others argue for a more direct, exploitative model, suggesting that the profitability of the laundries was a primary motivator from early on, and the religious mission was, to a large extent, a convenient justification. The truth is likely a messy, uncomfortable combination of the two. You watch a nun tallying a delivery docket, her pen scratching on the paper. You think of the money that changes hands for the work you do. Where does it go? Does any of it go into a fund for you? For when you leave, the thought is so absurd you almost laugh. You know the answer. The money disappears behind the convent walls, into the same black hole that swallowed your identity. This knowledge doesn't make you want to rebel. It's too big, too overwhelming for that. Instead, it hollows you out. The narrative of penance, as cruel as it was, at least offered a kind of meaning to your suffering. It told you that your pain had a purpose, a spiritual goal. But the realization that your pain is simply part of a commercial transaction strips it of even that grim dignity. Your suffering is not for God. It's for the bottom line. You are not a penitent sinner on a difficult path to grace. You are an unpaid employee, a human machine, a line item on an invisible ledger. And that, you realize, is a colder, more profound kind of damnation. In the vast, roaring space of the laundry, where spoken words are forbidden, another kind of connection begins to fall. It's fragile, dangerous, and built in the stolen moments and hidden spaces the system hasn't managed to completely control. You start to build friendships, not with words, but with shared labor and silent understanding. It happens at the big sorting table. You work opposite a girl named Sarah, or at least, the name the nuns have given her is Sarah. You know her real name is Eileen, because you heard another new girl whisper it before she was silenced. Eileen has tired eyes but quick, clever hands. One day, a heavy basket of wet linen slips from your grasp. Before the nun can turn, Eileen is there, effortlessly helping you lift it, her movement so swift and sure it goes unnoticed. She gives you a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It's a small thing, but it's a lifeline. A bond is formed. From then on, you look out for each other. You work in tandem, developing a silent rhythm that makes the grueling work a little more bearable. If you slow down from exhaustion, Eileen subtly picks up your slack. If she gets a painful crack in her hand, you find a way to take the harshest scrubbing tasks for an hour. You communicate through the work itself. Your shared movements are conversation. The machinery of the laundry, designed to deafen and isolate, sometimes becomes your shield. Behind a row of tall, rumbling dryers, shielded from the direct line of sight of the supervising nun, a quick word can be exchanged. Are you all right? Watch your back. The Reverend Mother is in a foul mood. I heard a girl was taken to the infirmary. These are whispers of solidarity, tiny sparks of community in the darkness. They are acts of immense trust. To speak is to make yourself vulnerable, to put your faith in another person, not to betray you for the sake of a slightly larger piece of bread at supper. Most of the time, that trust holds. These friendships are the most valuable and most dangerous things you can possess in this place. They are a rebellion against the enforced anonymity. To care for another person, to see her as an individual and not just another grey uniform, is to defy the entire philosophy of the institution. It is to insist on a humanity that the system is trying to erase. This brings us to a poignant, lesser-known form of connection within the walls, the creation of laundry families. Because many of the women were incarcerated for decades, they formed deep, long-lasting bonds that mimic familial relationships. Older women would adopt younger ones, becoming surrogate mothers or big sisters. They would teach them the ropes, protect them from the worst of the bullying which existed among the inmates as well as from the nuns, and share their hard-won survival strategies. In a place where so many had been abandoned by their real families, these created families were a vital source of emotional support and protection. They were a testament to the resilience of the human need for connection, even in the most barren of environments. Of course, the nuns were aware of these bonds and actively tried to break them up. If they noticed two women becoming too close, they would be separated, assigned to different work details on opposite sides of the laundry. This was a deliberate tactic to prevent any form of collective power from forming. The debate among historians here is on the effectiveness of this suppression. Did it succeed in keeping the women isolated and broken, or did it, paradoxically, make the bonds that survived even stronger and more precious? Survivor testimonies suggest the latter. The constant threat of separation made the moments of connection all the more intense and meaningful. The relationships that endured became the central pillar of a woman's psychological survival. You and Eileen have a secret. It's a very small one. In the lining of an old, discarded piece of machinery in a forgotten corner of the boiler room, you have hidden a tiny, sharpened piece of metal. You use it to scratch things on the back of a loose brick in the wall. You don't write words, that's too risky. You draw pictures. A crude flower. By bird. A lopsided heart. It's a secret diary. A shared history. Each week, one of you risks a moment alone to add a new scratch. It's a record of your existence. A message to no one and everyone that says, "We were here." One evening, after a particularly brutal day, you see Eileen stumble on her way back to the dormitory. She is pale and swaying on her feet. A nun barks at her to keep up. Later that night, in the dark, you creep from your bed to hers. You have saved your slice of bread from supper. A risky and hungry sacrifice. You press it into her hand under the thin blanket. She doesn't say anything, but her fingers close around yours for a second. Her hand is cold. In that brief touch, everything is communicated: gratitude, fear, friendship. It's a communion more sacred than any you find in the chapel. These hidden friendships are your anchor. They are the proof that the Cecilia or the Eileen they try to force on you is just a costume. Underneath the drab uniform, behind the silent obedience, you are still you. Your capacity to care for another person is the one thing they haven't been able to wash out of you. Not yet. The women who rule your world are a mystery. They are the nuns, the brides of Christ, who have dedicated their lives to God and, by extension, to your rehabilitation. They are your gods, your employers, and your judges. You learn to read them like you read the weather, because your daily survival depends on it. They are not a monolith. You quickly learn to categorize them. There is the Reverend Mother, who resides at the top of the pyramid. You see her rarely, usually from a distance, a figure of remote and absolute power. Her word is law. A visit from her to the laundry floor sends a wave of fear through the room. Work becomes faster, more frantic. Everyone knows her inspection could mean a collective punishment or the singling out of one unlucky girl for some perceived infraction. Then there are the supervising nuns, the lieutenants of this army. They patrol the work floor, their black habits swishing, their rosary beads clicking like a metronome of dread. These are the ones you interact with daily. You learn their individual personalities, their triggers, their tiny cruelties and rare, fleeting moments of something that might be mistaken for humanity. There is Sister Agatha, the overseer of the wash house. She is a large, stern woman with a perpetual scowl. Her voice is a sharp bark, and she seems to take a grim pleasure in finding fault. A crease in a sheet, a spot missed on a collar, these are personal affronts to her. It is Sister Agatha who doles out the most common punishments, her face impassive as she denies a girl her supper. In contrast, there is Sister Perpetua, who manages the mending room. She is ancient, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her hands gnarled with arthritis. She is silent, rarely speaking, but her eyes miss nothing. She doesn't scream or shout. Her disapproval is a quiet, heavy thing that feels even more damning. The women in her section work with a tense, focused precision, more afraid of her silence than of Sister Agatha's yelling. And then there is Sister Frances. She is younger, perhaps not much older than some of the inmates. She's assigned to the infirmary. Sometimes, you see a flicker of something in her eyes, pity, discomfort when she has to dress a burn on your hand from the hot press. Her touch is gentle. She doesn't speak, but she might leave an extra piece of clean bandage where you can find it later. These tiny gestures are hoarded like jewels. The other women whisper about her. Is she sympathetic, or is she just new, not yet hardened by the system? You learn not to trust that kindness too much. It could be a trick, or it could vanish tomorrow. This forces us to confront a difficult question: what was the psychology of the nuns themselves? It's easy to paint them as monstrous villains, and certainly, their actions were often cruel. But the reality was likely more complex. Many of these women entered the convent as teenagers themselves, giving up their own freedom for a life of rigid structure and obedience. They were products of the same repressive society that produced the penitents. They were taught the same stern, unforgiving theology. They, too, were trapped within the walls. albeit on the other side of the power dynamic. A little-known fact is that not all nuns in these orders worked in the laundries. Many convents also ran schools or hospitals. The assignment to the laundry was often seen as the least desirable posting. It was hard, unpleasant work, managing a population of difficult women. What kind of person thrived in that environment? What kind of person did it create? The academic debate on this is deeply polarized. One school of thought, often driven by survivor testimony, focuses on the sadistic cruelty of individual nuns, arguing that the system attracted and empowered women who had a predisposition for authoritarianism and abuse. Another perspective, sometimes labeled as revisionist or apologist, attempts a more sociological explanation. It argues that the nuns were institutionalized themselves. Their behavior was a product of their training and the pressures of their role. To manage hundreds of inmates with a small staff, they adopted harsh, dehumanizing methods as a means of survival and control. They may have seen their actions not as cruelty, but as necessary discipline, a form of tough love in service of a higher spiritual goal. The truth, most likely, is that both types of nuns existed, and that good women could be slowly ground down by the system into becoming unfeeling administrators of misery. You learn to navigate this complex web of personalities. You know to keep your head down and work your hardest when Sister Agatha is near. You know that a display of quiet competence is the only way to avoid Sister Perpetua's silent judgment. And you learn to accept Sister Francis's small kindness without expectation, as a rare and random bit of luck, like finding a patch of sun in a storm. You often wonder about their lives. Where do they go when they leave the laundry floor? What do they talk about amongst themselves? Do they have doubts? Do they feel regret? You look at their faces, framed by the stark white wimpless, and you see nothing. They are masks of piety and authority. They are women who have erased themselves to serve God, and in the process, they have become terrifyingly good at erasing you. You are locked in a strange, intimate battle with them, a daily struggle for your own soul. And you don't even know their real names. Time ceases to flow. It congeals, like the cold porridge in your old breakfast bowl. In the outside world, days have names: Monday, Friday, Sunday. Weeks are marked by paychecks and weekends. Seasons change, announced by falling leaves or the first blossoms. But inside the high walls of the laundry, these markers are erased. Time becomes a flat, endless circle. Your calendar has only two events: work and prayer. The day begins with a bell and ends with a bell. In between is the relentless, steam-filled purgatory of the laundry. Sunday is different, but not in a way that brings relief. It is a day of no work, but it is not a day of rest. It is a day of intensified religious observance. The prayers are longer, the sermons more severe, the kneeling more prolonged. The free time is spent in enforced silence, perhaps doing mending work or being forced to listen to a nun read from the lives of the saints. Sunday, with its lack of the distracting roar of the laundry, is often the hardest day of all. There is nothing to do but confront the bleak reality of your existence. You lose track of the date. Is it April or May? You try to guess the season by the quality of the light through the high, grimy windows, or by the type of stains on the clothes that come in. Grass stains on children's clothes might mean spring. The heavy wool coats that need cleaning suggest winter. These are your only clues. The outside world, whether it's news, it's politics, it's changing fashions, might as well be on another planet. You know nothing of it. You are living in a timeless, sealed bubble. This deliberate severing from the outside world was a crucial element of control. A woman who doesn't know how much time has passed is less likely to agitate for her release. A woman who knows nothing of the changing world is more easily convinced that she has no place to go back to. It fostered a state of learned helplessness. The walls became more than just physical barriers, they became mental ones. This temporal disorientation had a profound psychological effect, something that modern science helps us understand. The human brain relies on temporal landmarks to structure memory and maintain a sense of identity. Without them, the mind can begin to fray. Memories blur together. The sense of a personal narrative, a past, present, and future dissolve. You are not a person moving through time, you are an object stuck in a perpetual present tense. The days blur into an indistinguishable grey mass. Did that happen yesterday or a month ago? You can't be sure. This leads to a fascinating and tragic detail: the anniversary women. Some of the long-term inmates, the ones who had been there for 20, 30, even 50 years, would lose all track of their own age. They had entered as girls and had simply continued. Their birthdays came and went unremarked. They saw their faces grow old in the cracked mirrors of the washroom. But the number associated with that aging was lost. Survivor testimonies speak of women who, upon being released in their 60 seconds or 70 seconds, were shocked to learn how old they were. They still felt, in some fundamental way, like the young girl who had first walked through the gates. They had been frozen in the year of their committal. The academic debate on this topic centers on whether this temporal dislocation was a deliberate psychological strategy or a mere byproduct of the institution's isolationism. Some argue that the nuns, drawing on centuries of monastic tradition, understood perfectly well the power of disrupting secular time to foster a more spiritual and compliant mindset. By replacing the worldly calendar with a liturgical one, they were asserting the dominance of the sacred over the profane. Others argue a simpler case that the isolation was for practical reasons of security and control, and the profound psychological disorientation was a secondary, if convenient, consequence. As always, the truth is likely a mix of both calculated design and institutional habit. You try to fight it. You try to keep a calendar in your head. You make a tiny, secret scratch on the underside of your iron bed frame for each passing day. It's a desperate attempt to hold on to the linear flow of time. But some days you are so exhausted, so beaten down, that you forget, you lose count. The scratches become a meaningless series of marks. One day, you are sorting through a pile of linens from a nearby convent school. Tucked inside a pillowcase is a page torn from a newspaper, used as wrapping for a girl's forgotten hair ribbon. The date on the top reads October 28, 1996. You stare at it. 1996. You entered this place in the spring of 1961. You have been here for 2.5 years. The number is a physical blow. You thought it had been a year, maybe a little more. The realization that so much time has been stolen from you, so effortlessly, is more terrifying than any punishment. The world has been spinning on without you, and you have been stuck here, washing its clothes. You quickly hide the scrap of paper, your heart hammering in your chest. Later, in the darkness of the dormitory, you hold on to this knowledge. 2.5 years. It's a concrete fact in a world of endless, blurry days. It doesn't help you escape. It doesn't make the work any easier. But it's something. It's a piece of the real world. It reminds you that time is still passing out there, and as long as it is, there is a possibility, however faint, that this timeless nightmare might one day have an end. In a world of total control, rebellion is not a grand, dramatic act. There are no riots in the laundry, no organized escapes. The system is too powerful, the surveillance too complete, the punishments too severe. Instead, rebellion is a thing of tiny, secret victories. It is a quiet war waged in the small spaces where the institution's gaze cannot fully penetrate. It is the art of reclaiming a fraction of your own soul. You learn to practice these small disobediences. They are your lifeline. Perhaps, while mending a sheet, you use a thread of a slightly different color to sew a tiny, almost invisible initial, the first letter of your real name, into the hem. No one will ever see it. The sheet will go back to a hotel or a hospital. But you know it's there. It's a secret message sent out into the world, a declaration that you still exist. Maybe your rebellion is sensory. The laundry is a world of harsh smells: bleach, lye, sweat. But sometimes, a bundle of laundry comes in from a wealthy house, and the sheets are perfumed with lavender or rose water. You are supposed to wash that scent out immediately, but you might risk burying your face in the fabric for a single, intoxicating second. breathing in a smell that reminds you of a world with gardens and beauty. It's a crime of nostalgia, a theft of a single, pleasant sensation. Singing is another battlefield. You are forced to sing hymns, the words drilled into your head. But in the roar of the machines, you can sing them with a silent, defiant anger, or you can hum a different tune under your breath. A popular song you remember from the radio, a melody from the life they stole from you. It's a tiny, internal act of cultural resistance, replacing their sacred music with your own secular memory. These acts are incredibly risky, if caught. The punishment would be swift and disproportionate. A hidden flower petal could be interpreted as a sign of worldly attachment and result in solitary confinement. A hummed tune could be seen as defiance of holy discipline. But the risk is what gives these acts their power. They are a confirmation that you still have a will of your own, that you can still make a choice, however small. This phenomenon of tiny rebellions is well documented in studies of prisoners and other captive populations. It's what social scientists call resistance of the weak. When open revolt is impossible, people find symbolic ways to defy authority and maintain their sense of self. It can be as simple as how you fold your uniform or the expression on your face when you think no one is watching. These are not attempts to overthrow the system, but to survive it with one's spirit intact. This leads to one of the most poignant and peculiar forms of rebellion within the Laundries, the secret cultivation of beauty. In an environment designed to be as drab and ugly as possible, some women went to extraordinary lengths to create tiny pockets of beauty. A girl might find a shard of colored glass in the yard and hide it in her locker, taking it out in secret to watch the light catch it. Another might use a stolen bit of thread to embroider a minuscule pattern on the inside of her uniform cuff. The most remarkable examples involve the secret growing of plants. A woman might manage to smuggle a single bean or seed from the kitchen and plant it in a crack in the courtyard wall, tending to it with hoarded drops of water. To nurture a living, growing thing in this place of institutional death was the ultimate act of defiance. It was an affirmation of life, creativity, and hope. The academic debate on this topic is about interpretation. Do these small acts of resistance represent a meaningful form of agency, a testament to the unbreakable human spirit, or are they, in fact, a sign of how thoroughly the system has crushed its victims, reducing their idea of freedom to something as pathetic as a stolen button or a hidden flower? Some critics argue that focusing on these tiny rebellions romanticizes the suffering and distracts from the overwhelming brutality of the system. They suggest it's a way of making the story more palatable, of finding a silver lining in a cloud that had none. Others argue that to ignore these acts is to deny the women their last vestige of humanity. It is to fall into the institution's own trap of seeing them as passive, broken objects rather than as resilient individuals fighting for survival in their own way. You have your own small rebellion. It involves Eileen. You have found a way to leave messages for each other. You use the language of laundry. A shirt folded in a particular, unusual way, left on the pile you know she will collect, means I'm thinking of you. A knot tied in the corner of a dish rag is a warning, be careful today. It's a silent, coded conversation that no one else can understand. It's your own private language, invented out of the materials of your prison. One day, you find a small, blue feather from a jay, caught in the grill of an outer gate. It's a patch of impossible, vibrant color in a world of grey and white. You manage to snatch it. That night, in the jar, you pass it to Eileen. It's a gift of pure, useless beauty. It serves no purpose. It cannot be eaten or used. It is, in its own way, a prayer. A prayer to a world outside these walls. A world where birds are free to fly. You don't know if you will ever be free, but for a moment, holding that tiny feather, you feel a flicker of the sky. And that, in itself, is a victory. Your body, which was the original reason for your condemnation, becomes your next betrayer. The relentless physical toll of the work, combined with the crude diet and damp, cold living conditions, begins to break you down. Sickness is a constant presence in the laundry, as pervasive as the smell of bleach. It starts with the small things. The skin on your hands is permanently cracked and bleeding from the harsh ice open scalding water. The sores often become infected, throbbing with a dull, persistent pain. You develop a chronic, hacking cough from the steam and the chemical fumes, a condition so common it's known as the laundry cough. Your back is a geography of constant aches. Your muscles knotted from lifting heavy baskets and bending over washable business for hours on end. But to get truly sick, to be unable to work, is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to you. In the ideology of the laundry, sickness is not just a medical condition, it's a moral failing. It is seen as a form of laziness, a way of shirking your penitential duties. To complain of pain is to be accused of giving in to the flesh, the very thing you are here to mortify. The needs of your body are an inconvenience to the smooth operation of the laundry. When you can no longer hide your fever, when you collapse at your workstation, you are taken to the infirmary. It is not a place of comfort. It's a small, cold ward with a few beds, overseen by a nun who often has little or no formal medical training. The remedies are primitive aspirin, foul-tasting tonics, and true. There is a deep suspicion of modern medicine, a belief that suffering is spiritually beneficial. You are left to lie in bed, your illness seen as another trial to be endured, another part of your penance. The greatest fear is being diagnosed with tuberculosis, or consumption, which was rampant in these overcrowded, poorly ventilated institutions. A diagnosis was often a death sentence. Women with TB were isolated, sometimes in a separate, even more neglected part of the building, to prevent the spread of the disease. Their slow decline was a grim spectacle, a warning to the others of the ultimate consequence of physical frailty. This brings us to a particularly disturbing and little discussed aspect of the laundry's healthcare system: dentistry and reproductive health. Dental care was virtually non-existent. Women suffered for years with rotting teeth, the pain a constant, agonizing companion. The only solution, when the pain became unbearable, was extraction, often performed crudely, without anesthetic. As for gynecological issues, they were shrouded in a profound sense of shame and secrecy, in a place that condemned female sexuality. Any problem related to the female body was seen as a manifestation of a woman's inherent influence and was often ignored or met with punitive neglect. The historical records, or lack thereof, made this a difficult topic for researchers to study. The religious orders did not keep meticulous medical files. Deaths were often recorded simply as died in the care of the sisters, with the cause of death left vague. The academic debate here revolves around the question of neglect versus intent. Was the appalling level of medical care a result of ignorance and a lack of resources, or was it a deliberate, systemic neglect, rooted in the theological belief that physical suffering was spiritually cleansing and that these women's bodies were not worthy of proper care? Many scholars argue that it was a combination of both. A lethal mix of 19th century medical ignorance and a punitive religious ideology that devalued the female body. You lie in the infirmary bed, shivering with fever. Sister Frances, the younger nun, brings you a mug of hot, sweet tea. It is a small kindness, but it does little to ease the ache in your bones. From your window, you can hear the relentless, rhythmic thumping of the laundry. The work goes on without you. You know that you are not just sick, you are now unproductive. You are a drain on the institution's resources. You have to get better, not for your own sake, but to become a functioning part of the machine again. You think about your body. You were sent here because it was deemed a temptation, a source of sin. No, its weakness is a further crime. It feels like a trap from which there is no escape. They punish you for your body's vitality, and they punish you for its decay. After a few days, the fever breaks. You are weak, thinner than before, but you are deemed well enough to work. You are sent back to the laundry floor. The other women look at you with a mixture of pity and relief. Pity for what you endured, and relief that it wasn't them. As you pick up the first heavy, sopping sheet, a sharp pain shoots through your back. You bite your lip to keep from crying out. You cannot be sick again. You push the pain down, deep inside you, and carry on. You learn, as all the women here must, to treat your own body as an enemy. A stubborn animal that must be beaten into submission. Day after day after day. There is a secret within the secret. A silence within the silence. It is the presence of the babies. Many of the girls who are sent to the laundries are pregnant. Their sin made visible to the world. They are hidden away behind the high walls to avoid bringing shame upon their families. For them, the laundry is not just a place of work, it is a maternity ward and a nursery. All run with the same cold, institutional cruelty. You see them, the pregnant girls. Their drab uniforms are let out. Their condition a public, unspoken accusation. They are often treated more harshly than the others. Their physical state seen as the ultimate proof of their depravity. They are forced to work in the laundry for as long as they are physically able, sometimes right up until the day of their labor. Their heavy bellies a cumbersome burden as they lift and scrub. When their time comes, they are taken not to a proper hospital, but to a designated delivery room within the convent, often just a bed in a corner of the infirmary. The birth is overseen by a nun, perhaps with the help of a local, sympathetic doctor, but often without any medical professional present. It is a terrifying, lonely ordeal. The young mothers are given no comfort, no reassurance. The pain of childbirth is framed as their rightful punishment, a physical manifestation of the biblical curse on Eve. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. After the baby is born, the new mother is allowed a brief, heartbreaking short period of time with her child, sometimes a few weeks, sometimes a few months. During this time, she must still work, her baby kept in a Spartan nursery, cared for by one of the older penitents or a designated nun. She might be allowed to feed her child, to hold it at prescribed times, but the bond is never allowed to fully form. It is a connection that is destined to be severed. And then the day comes. It is the laundry's most profound and unspoken trauma. The mother is informed that her baby is being taken away for adoption. She has no say in the matter. She is forced to sign papers she may not understand, relinquishing all rights to her child. She is told it is for the best, that her child will have a better life with a good, healthy, married couple. She is told that to keep the child would be an act of selfishness, dooming it to a life of shame. You have witnessed this. You haven't seen the moment of separation itself that is done in private, away from prying eyes, but you have seen the before and the after. You have seen a young mother in the nursery, her face transformed with a fierce, desperate love as she holds her baby, and you have seen her a day later, back at the scrubbing sinks, her eyes utterly empty, her body moving like an automaton. It is a grief so profound it has no sound. The other women do not speak of it. They simply work around her, giving her a wide berth, as if her sorrow is a contagion. This practice of forced adoptions was a massive, highly organized operation. The religious orders that ran the laundries also ran many of the country's adoption agencies. They created a closed, self-sustaining system. They took in the fallen mothers, facilitated the births, and then supplied the babies to a network of childless Catholic families, often for a substantial donation. It was, in effect, human trafficking under the guise of religious charity. The records were often falsified or destroyed, making it nearly impossible for the children, or the mothers, to ever find each other again. A particularly chilling and little-known detail of this system involves the mortality rates in these mother and baby homes. Due to the poor sanitation, malnourishment, and lack of proper medical care, the death rate for infants was astronomically high, far exceeding the national average. Many of these tiny bodies were never given a proper burial. They were placed in unmarked graves, sometimes in mass plots, within the convent grounds. Their existence was as erased in death as it was in life. The academic and legal controversy surrounding this is immense and ongoing. For decades, the Irish state effectively outsourced its social services for unmarried mothers to these religious institutions, turning a blind eye to the abuses. The debate now centers on culpability. How much did the state know? To what extent were government officials actively complicit in the forced adoptions and the cover-up of death rates? Documents that have come to light in recent years suggest a high level of state awareness and cooperation, leading to a profound national reckoning with this dark chapter of history. One day, a new girl arrives. Her name is Mel. She is no more than 17, and she is heavily pregnant. She is terrified. You and Eileen, through your silent language, try to offer her what little comfort you can: an extra piece of bread, a shared moment of rest. You watch her as her time grows near. You see the nuns watching her too, their eyes cold and assessing. You are not just looking at a girl, you are looking at a future product. The day she is taken away to give birth, the laundry feels even more silent than usual. When she returns to the work floor a few weeks later, she is a ghost. The light is gone out of her eyes. You don't ask. You don't speak. You just pass her the soap, and the work continues. You are all complicit in this silence, because to speak of it is to acknowledge a horror too great to bear. You are washing away the sins of the world, and the smallest, most innocent souls are the first to be rinsed away. The wall is a constant presence. It is the first thing you see in the morning from the dormitory window and the last thing you see as dusk falls. It is a solid, unyielding fact, a physical manifestation of your trapped existence. But every now and then, you get a glimpse of the world beyond it. These moments are both a source of hope and a form of exquisite torture. Sometimes, a delivery truck driver, a man from the outside world, will leave the main gate open for a few moments too long as he turns his vehicle. In that brief window, you might catch a sliver of a normal street scene: a woman walking with a shopping bag, a child on a bicycle, a red bus driving past. The colors seem impossibly bright, the sounds impossibly vibrant. It's like watching a movie of a life you used to know. The sight fills you with a painful, desperate longing. Other times, the sounds of the outside world drift over the wall. On a summer evening, you might hear the laughter of children playing in a nearby park. You might hear the distant chime of an ice cream van, a sound so full of simple, innocent joy that it feels like a physical blow. On a Saturday night, you might hear the faint sounds of music and celebration from a wedding at the local parish hall. You and the other women fall silent, listening, each of you lost in your own thoughts, your own memories of dances and laughter. The sounds are a reminder that life, real life, is going on without you, just a few hundred yards away. These glimpses are a double-edged sword. They are proof that the world you lost still exists, which fuels the tiny, flickering flame of hope for release. But they also make your own reality feel even more stark, more deprived. The contrast between the free world outside and the grey, silent world inside is almost too much to bear. Some of the older women, the long-timers, seem to have trained themselves not to look, not to listen. They keep their eyes down, their focus inward. They know that to hope is to suffer. This psychological torment of proximity is a key feature of the Magdalene Laundries. Unlike a remote island prison, these institutions were often located in the heart of cities and towns. They were hidden in plain sight. This physical closeness to normal life served as a constant, brutal reminder of what the women had lost. They were not in a forgotten wilderness, they were right next door to freedom, yet separated from it by an impassable barrier. And here we come to a strange and specific detail: the view from the top floor. In some multi-story laundries, the highest floors were used for drying and ironing. From these high windows, the inmates had a panoramic, if tantalizing, view of the surrounding city. They could see the rooftops, the church spires, the smoke from chimneys. They could watch the seasons change in the trees of a nearby park. This privilege of a view was, in reality, a form of psychological cruelty. It was a daily, panoramic display of their own imprisonment. They could see the world, but they could never, ever touch it. The historical debate around this proximity is fascinating. Why didn't more people in the surrounding communities know or do something? Was the wall so effective at hiding the truth, or was there a collective, unspoken agreement not to look too closely, not to ask too many questions? This is the concept of social blindness. Many historians argue that society, as a whole, tacitly approved of the laundries. They were a convenient solution to a social problem. People may have had a uneasy sense that the conditions inside were not good, but they preferred not to know the details. The wall served as a barrier not just for the inmates, but for the consciences of the people outside. It allowed them to live alongside a brutal system of forced labor without having to confront their own complicity. One day, you are given a new task. A section of the outer wall needs to be repointed, and a group of you are assigned to haul buckets of water and mortar for the paid workmen who have been brought in. It is hard, heavy labor, but it is a change of scenery. For the first time, you are outside in the courtyard for an extended period. The workmen are governed to ignore you, following the strict rules about not interacting with the penitents. But from your position near the wall, you can hear a conversation on the other side. It's two women, talking as they walk past. Their voices are clear. They are gossiping about a new film, complaining about the price of butter, planning a trip to the seaside. It is the most mundane, ordinary conversation imaginable, and it is the most beautiful thing you have ever heard. It is the sound of freedom. You stand frozen, a heavy bucket in your hands, just listening. You drink in their words, their easy laughter. For a moment, you are not Cecilia, the penitent. You are just a girl, listening to other girls talk. The moment is shattered when a nun barks an order at you. You turn away from the wall and get back to work, the women's voices fading away. That night, you lie in bed and replay their conversation in your head. The price of butter, a trip to the seaside. These small, everyday details are more precious to you than gold. They are a proof of life. The wall is high, but for a few seconds, their voices had passed right through it. It's not enough to set you free, but it's enough to keep you going for another day. It's a reminder that somewhere, beyond the stone in the silence, there is a world worth fighting to get back to. The realization dawns on you slowly, piece by piece, with every delivery truck that arrives and departs. You are a part of a much larger system. You are not just hidden, you are connected. The laundry is not a self-contained entity, it is a vital organ in the body of the society that has rejected you. And that society, you begin to understand, is not just a passive bystander. It is your biggest client. You see it in the laundry itself. You learn to recognize the different types of linens, the markings that tell you their origin. They are the rough, practical sheets and towels from the National Army barracks. There are the endless tablecloths and napkins from government ministries, used for official dinners and state functions. There are the small, delicate items from the ARs and UACH Terrian, the official residence of the President of Ireland. You are, quite literally, washing the state's dirty laundry. The very institutions that are supposed to represent justice, order, and national pride are direct customers of this slave labor enterprise. Then there are the commercial clients. The finest hotels in Dublin send their luxurious bed linens and bathrobes here. The most exclusive private clubs, where powerful men make deals over whiskey, have their tablecloths slandered by your raw, bleeding hands. You wash the uniforms of airline staff, of bank tellers, of factory workers. You are an invisible, unaccompanied partner in the great engine of Irish commerce. And perhaps most poignantly, there is the laundry from ordinary people. The parish priest sends his vestments. The wealthy doctor's family sends their household linens. Even middle-class families, for a special occasion like a christening or a wedding, might send their best tablecloths to the local convent laundry for a professional, wholly finished. The entire society, from the highest levels of government to the ordinary parishioner, is complicit. They are all participants in this system, bound together by the simple, mundane act of needing their clothes washed. This widespread complicity is what made the system so robust and long-lasting. It wasn't just a secret kept by a few powerful nuns. It was an open secret, a service utilized by thousands. Everyone benefited from the cheap, high-quality laundry service the convents provided. The state saved money on its contracts. Businesses increased their profit margins. Families maintained their respectability. The price for all this convenience was your freedom. But that was a price no one had to see. You and the other women were the hidden cost. This brings us to a strange and specific detail: the laundry vans. The larger institutions operated their own fleet of delivery vans, oft unpainted in a discreet, unassuming color. These vans, with the convent's name perhaps written in small, tasteful letters on the side, were a common sight on the streets of Irish towns and cities. They were the public face of the enterprise, a symbol of the nuns' industry and charity. People saw them and thought of clean sheets and good works. They did not think of the girls locked inside, their lives consumed by the labor that filled those vans. The van was a mobile piece of the wall, hiding the truth in plain sight. The academic debate here focuses on the nature of this societal complicity. Was it an active, conscious conspiracy, or a more passive, unthinking acceptance? Historians like James M. Smith, in his groundbreaking book Ireland's Magdalene Laundries on the nation's architecture of containment, argue for the latter. He uses the term architecture of containment to describe not just the physical walls, but the entire social, legal, and psychological infrastructure that allowed these institutions to flourish. He argues that Irish society collectively agreed not to know, to look away. The laundries served a necessary function, removing inconvenient women from public view, and so society was willing to tolerate them without scrutinizing them too closely. It was a willful blindness, a national pathology. You are sorting through a pile of priests' pounds, the white liturgical garments they wear for Mass. They need special care, delicate washing and perfect ironing. As you work, you think of the priest in your own home parish, the one who condemned you. Does he send his vestments here? Is it possible that the very garment he wears to preach about sin and redemption on a Sunday morning was laundered by a girl he himself sent away? The thought makes you feel sick. The complicity is not abstract. It is tangible. It is in the fabric you hold in your hands. Each sheet, each towel, each tablecloth is a link in a chain that binds you to the outside world, the very world that has imprisoned you. They have not just cast you out, they have found a way to continue using you. You are simultaneously an outcast and a servant. This knowledge changes your anger. It's no longer just directed at the nuns or the priest who sent you here. It's a broader, more diffuse anger at the whole world. At the hotelier, the government official, the housewife who wants her tablecloths to be perfect. They are all part of it. They all have clean hands because yours are dirty. Demul, you realize, doesn't just keep you in. It protects them from having to see the price of their own cleanliness. Escape. The word is a whisper, a fantasy, a myth. It is the story you tell yourself in the dark of the dormitory when the despair becomes too much to bear. But the reality of escape is a far more desperate and often futile endeavor. You hear stories, past and fragmented whispers behind the roaring machines. A girl who climbed the wall at night, using a rope made of knotted sheets. Another who simply walked out the gate when a delivery driver left it unattended. A pair of girls who managed to slip away during an outing to a nearby church. You don't know if these stories are true. They have the quality of folklore, of legends passed down to give a sliver of hope to the hopeless. Most of the time, the stories end in failure. The escapee is caught within hours. The local police, the Gardaí, would be notified by the convent. And this is a crucial point: the state actively collaborated in recapturing the escapees. A girl found wandering the streets, disheveled in her institutional uniform, would be swiftly returned to the care of the sisters. There was no question of her rights, no inquiry into why she fled. She was considered the property of the convent, and the police were the agents of her return. When an escapee is brought back, her punishment is severe and public. It is designed to be a deterrent to anyone else who might be entertaining similar ideas. She might be beaten. She would certainly have her head shaved, a mark of ultimate humiliation. She would be subjected to a long period of solitary confinement, often in a cold, dark cell with only bread and water. Her spirit would be systematically broken, her failure paraded before the other inmates as a lesson in the futility of hope. You have seen girls after they have been returned. They are shadows of their former selves. Their eyes vacant, the fight completely gone from them. Despite the risks, the dream of leaving persists. But leaving is more than just getting over the wall. The bigger question is, where would you go? You have no money, no possessions other than the drab uniform on your back. Your family has already rejected you once. Would they take you back? Now that you are a runaway on top of your other sins, the world outside has moved on. You have no skills other than industrial laundry work. How would you survive? The walls of the laundry are not just physical, they are psychological, social, and economic. The nuns know this. They know that for many of the women, there is simply no place to go. This brings us to a strange and paradoxical aspect of the system, the concept of release. There was no formal sentencing, so there was no formal release date. A woman's stay was indefinite. In theory, a woman could be released when the Reverend Mother deemed her penitence complete. In practice, this was incredibly rare and arbitrary. Some women were released after a few years, often if a family member intervened and was willing to take them back, but many weren't ever released at all. They grew old and died within the walls, their entire adult lives spent in servitude. Here's a particularly bizarre detail about the process of leaving the dowry. In some cases, a man seeking a wife, particularly a farmer from a rural area who couldn't find a local girl, might approach a convent. The nuns would recommend one of the penitents, usually one who was considered pliant and a hard worker. The convent would provide a small dowry for the girl, essentially paying the man to take her off their hands. The woman would be married off, trading one form of servitude for another. She had no say in the arrangement. Her release was a transaction, a transfer of property. The academic debate on this topic focuses on the institution's self-perception. Did the nuns and the religious orders truly see themselves as running a permanent penitentiary, or did they maintain the fiction of it being a temporary refuge? Even as the decades passed and the same women grew old within their walls, the records and survivor testimonies suggest a deep level of institutional self-deception. The language of care and protection was used consistently, even for women who had been imprisoned for 50 or 60 years. To admit that it was a life sentence would be to admit that it was a prison, a truth the orders could never publicly or, perhaps, even privately acknowledge. You think about leaving constantly. You study the walls, looking for a loose stone, a weak point. You watch the delivery drivers, memorizing their routines. But fear always holds you back. The image of the girls with their shaved heads, their broken spirits, is a powerful deterrent, and the question, where would I go, looms even larger than the wall itself. One day, Eileen whispers to you by the hydro extractors. I'm going to try, she says. Tonight, there's a loose bar on the scullery window. Your blood runs cold. You want to beg her not to tell her it's impossible. But you see the look in her eyes are desperate. And result, you simply nod. That evening, you create a small diversion in the dormitory, a feigned argument with another girl, to draw the patrolling nun's attention away from the wing where the scullery is. It's the most terrifying thing you have ever done. You lie awake all night, your heart pounding, listening for the alarm bell that will signal her discovery, but it never comes. In the morning, at roll call, her name is called, and there is only silence. A wave of fear and hope washes over you. Did she make it, or is her body lying broken at the bottom of the wall? You don't know. You may never know. The legend of her departure, true or not, will now become one of the stories whispered in the dark. A story of a girl who chose the terrifying uncertainty of the outside world over the slow, certain death within the walls. Years pass. You lose count of the seasons you've watched blur past the grimy windows. The scratches on the bottom of your bed frame have become a meaningless jumble. You are one of the long-timers now. The fiery anger of your youth has cooled to a dull, banked timber of resentment. Your body moves with the resigned efficiency of the institutionalized. You know the rhythms of the laundry better than you know your own heartbeat. You've been promoted from the hydro extractors to the hot press. Your days spent in the dry, baking heat, expertly feeding sheets into the massive rollers. It's a position of trust. You are considered reliable, broken. But something is changing, not inside you, but outside the walls. The world you catch glimpses of is becoming different. The cars look sleeker, the women's hairstyles are shorter, their skirts are higher. The music that occasionally drifts over the wall has a harder, more electric sound. The 1960 seconds are bleeding into the 70 seconds, and the 70 seconds into the 80 seconds. Ireland, so long a conservative, insular society, is slowly, grudgingly, beginning to open up. The changes are felt even within the laundry. In subtle, almost imperceptible ways, the volume of work starts to decrease. The advent of the domestic washing machine means that fewer families need to send their laundry out. Hotels and hospitals begin to install their own modern, in-house laundering facilities. The old, lucrative contracts start to dry up. The laundry, once a thriving commercial enterprise, is becoming an anachronism. Its business model, built on Victorian technology and slave labor, is no longer viable in the modern world. The population inside the walls is changing. Too, fewer and fewer fallen women are being sent here. The social and religious pressures that condemned you are beginning to ease. Ever so slightly, new social support systems, however inadequate, are emerging for unmarried mothers. The state is slowly, reluctantly, taking on the social welfare responsibilities it had for so long outsourced to the church. The constant stream of new inmates is dwindling to a trickle. The laundry is aging. The machines are old and frequently break down. The nuns themselves are getting older, their numbers dwindling, with fewer young novices joining the order to replace them. The building itself is decaying, the cost of its upkeep becoming prohibitive. The entire institution is slowly, quietly, crumbling from within. A sense of entropy, of winding down, permeates the air. The bells still ring, the prayers are still said, but the old, rigid certainty is gone. It is being replaced by a kind of weary, bewildered inertia. This decline was a slow and uneven process, happening at different rates in different institutions across the country. But the trend was undeniable. The economic and social forces that had sustained the Magdalene laundries for 2 centuries were finally dissolving. This brings us to a strange, poignant detail of this era of decline: the pensioners. As the laundry work dried up, the remaining women, many of them now elderly, were kept on in the convents. They were no longer penitents in a profitable laundry, they were effectively pensioners, living in the care of the nuns. They would do light cleaning or gardening work, their lives still institutionalized and controlled. But the pretense of penitential labor was largely abandoned. They had become permanent, dependent residents of a failing system. The academic debate surrounding this period focuses on the reasons for the eventual closure of the last laundry in 1996. Was it a moral awakening on the part of the church or the state, or was it simply a matter of economic inevitability? The overwhelming evidence points to the latter. The laundries didn't close because they were deemed wrong, they closed because they were no longer profitable. The moral reckoning would only come later, after the doors were shut and the secrets began to spill out. The system did not end with a bang of righteous justice, but with a quiet whimper of economic failure. You notice the changes in small ways. The workdays become shorter, sometimes the machine breaks down and isn't repaired for weeks. The discipline, while still present, has lost some of its sharp, vicious edge. The older nuns seem more tired than terrifying. The high walls, which once seemed like an eternal prison, now start to feel like the decaying ramparts of a forgotten empire. One day, a young nun, one you've never seen before, comes to find you in the mending room. She has a different air about her, less rigid, her eyes holding a trace of nervous apology. She tells you that a distant cousin has been found, someone who is willing to take you in. She tells you that the institution is closing its laundry operation. She tells you that you are free to go. The words don't register at first. Free to go, after all this time. You look down at your hands, gnarled and scarred from decades of labor. You look around the room, the only world you have known for most of your adult life. Freedom is not a joyful explosion. It is a terrifying void. Who are you without this place? What is left of the girl who entered all those years ago? You have dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it is here, you are filled not with elation, but with a profound, paralyzing fear. The old order is collapsing, and you are about to be cast out into its ruins. Freedom has a strange, metallic taste. It tastes like the exhaust from a city bus, a smell you haven't been this close to in decades. The young nun accompanies you to the gate, the same heavy iron gate you entered through a lifetime ago. It grinds open. She hands you a small brown envelope containing a meager sum of money for your trouble. She says, the inadequacy of the phrase hanging in the air. She also gives you a bundle of second-hand clothes, donated to the convent. They feel strange and flimsy after years in the heavy, shapeless uniform. You step out onto the pavement. The gate clangs shut behind you for the last time. You stand there for a moment, blinking in the bright, unfiltered sunlight. The world is an assault on your senses. It is so loud. The roar of traffic, the chatter of people, music blasting from a shop doorway. It's a chaotic symphony. So different from the controlled, rhythmic noise of the laundry. The colors are overwhelmingly vibrant. The neon signs, the bright clothing on passers-by, the vivid green of a city park. It's a visual feast that makes you dizzy. People rush past you, their faces set with purpose. They walk so fast. You have been trained to walk slowly, deliberately. You feel like a stone in the middle of a rushing river, an obstacle, an anachronism. A young man with brightly colored herent headphones bumps into you, mutters sorry, and hurries on. He has no idea who you are, what you are. You are just a strange old woman in ill-fitting clothes, standing lost on a street corner. You have an address, written on a piece of paper, for the distant cousin who has agreed to take you in. You have to navigate the city, a place you barely recognize. To find it, you have to figure out the bus system, handle money that looks and feels different, ask for directions from strangers whose accents and slang are unfamiliar. Every simple task is a monumental challenge. You are a foreigner in your own country. This experience of disorientation and trauma upon release is a common thread in the testimonies of Magdalene survivors. They were released into a world that had completely changed, with no support, no counseling, and no skills to cope with modern life. They didn't know how to use a telephone, how to operate a household appliance, or how to manage a bank account. They had been so thoroughly institutionalized that they lacked most basic life skills. Their release was not a liberation, but a second abandonment. They were pushed out of the frying pan of the institution into the fire of a world they were completely unprepared for. A particularly poignant and specific challenge they faced was social interaction. After decades of enforced silence, learning how to make small talk, how to express opinions, or how to simply have a normal conversation was incredibly difficult. Many survivors speak of a profound and lasting social anxiety, a feeling of always being on the outside, of never quite fitting in. They had forgotten how to be normal. The academic discussion on this topic often uses the term post-institutional trauma. It's similar to the experiences of long-term prisoners of war or members of high-control religious cults. The psychological damage of institutionalization does not end when the person is released. The trauma of losing one's identity, autonomy, and connection to the world has lifelong consequences, including depression, anxiety, PTSD, and a profound difficulty in forming trusting relationships. The state, which had been complicit in their confinement, offered almost no resources to help them deal with this trauma upon their release. You finally find the right bus and stumble aboard. You sit hunched in a seat, clutching your small bag, feeling the curious or indifferent glances of the other passengers. You look out the window at the new island. You see women driving cars, working in offices, wearing trousers, the world you were punished for. The world of female autonomy and expression seems to have won, but you were not a part of that victory. You were a casualty of the war. Your cousin lives in a small house in a sprawling suburban estate. She is a kind woman, but she is a stranger. Her home is filled with objects you don't understand: a microwave oven, a television with a remote control, a dishwasher. She tries to be patient, but there is an awkwardness between you, an unbridgeable gap of experience. You are a ghost from a past she has only read about, and she is a representative of a future you can't comprehend. That night, you lie in a soft bed in a quiet room. It is the first time in decades you have slept in a room by yourself, but the silence is deafening. You are used to the collective breathing and coughing of the dormitory. You are used to the hard mattress and the single, scratchy blanket. This comfort is uncomfortable. This freedom is terrifying. You close your eyes and, for a moment, you almost wish you could hear the distant, familiar thumping of the laundry machines. It was the sound of your prison, but it was also the only sound of home you have ever known. You have escaped the wall, but you realize with a cold certainty that the wall is still inside you. The story should have ended there, with you and the other survivors quietly assimilated or lost in the new island. The gates of the Laundries rusted shut, the secrets buried with the last generation of nuns. But history has a way of refusing to stay buried. It happens in 1993. In Dublin, the convent of one of the largest Magdalene laundries, the one at Donnybrook, has sold off part of its land to a property developer. The nuns are in financial trouble, and the land is valuable. As the developers begin their work, clearing the ground for a new apartment complex, their excavators hit something unexpected. It's not rock. It's bones. At first, they think it's an old collar, a pit, or a famine grave. But as they dig further, the truth becomes horrificously clear. They uncover a mass grave containing the remains of 133 bodies. The convent is forced to admit that these are the bodies of former inmates, but their records are incomplete. They can only produce death certificates for 75 of the women. The others are nameless, unrecorded. They were disposed of like so much refuse. Their deaths as unaccompanied as their lives. The discovery of the mass grave is a spark in a tinderbox. It makes national and international news. The carefully constructed wall of silence, which had stood for 2 centuries, is shattered overnight. The term Magdalene laundry, once a half-forgotten whisper, is suddenly on everyone's lips. Journalists, historians, and activists begin digging into the past, trying to piece together the full story. The discovery forces a national confrontation. People who had lived to these institutions their whole lives are forced to ask themselves what they truly knew, what they chose to ignore. The property developers find was not an isolated incident. As researchers began to investigate other former laundry sites, similar stories emerged of unmarked graves and neglected cemeteries, a testament to the systemic dehumanization of the women who lived and died within them. This specific detail, the exhumation and subsequent handling of the remains, is a story in itself. After the initial discovery, the remains of the 133 women were exhumed. But instead of being given individual burials or having a major effort made to identify them, they were cremated and then reburied in a single, communal plot at Glasnevin Cemetery, a large public cemetery in Dublin. While a memorial was eventually erected, many survivors and activists saw this as a final, terrible insult. The women, who had been stripped of their individual identities in life, were denied them again in death. Their ashes mixed together, their stories forever lost. It was a secondary sewer. The academic world, which had touched on the subject before, now dives in with new urgency. Historians begin the painstaking work of trying to reconstruct the history from the few surviving records. Sociologists interview the remaining survivors, documenting their testimonies, Legal scholars examine the tangled web of complicity between the church and the state. A fierce debate erupts. The religious orders issue carefully worded statements expressing regret for any suffering caused, but they resist a full apology or an admission of systemic abuse. They frame the Laundries as well-intentioned institutions that were a product of their time. You watch this unfold on your cousin's television. You see the images of the excavators, the interviews with angry activists, the defensive statements from church officials. Each news report is a validation of your own stolen life. For decades, you were told you were the sinner, the one who should be ashamed. Now, for the first time, the shame is being turned back on the institution that imprisoned you, and on the society that let it happen. You see other women on the television, their faces often in shadow to protect their identity, telling their stories. Their voices are hesitant, filled with a pain you know intimately. They talk about the endless work, the hunger, the cold, the names they were forced to use, the babies that were taken. They are telling your story. For the first time in your life, you feel seen. You are not alone. There were thousands of you. The discovery of the graves makes it impossible for the state to continue its silence. The pressure for a formal inquiry becomes irresistible. The ghosts of the laundry, unearthed from their unmarked graves, are now demanding a reckoning. They are demanding that their names be spoken and their stories be heard. Your story, the story you were forced to keep silent for a lifetime, is about to become a part of your nation's history. A dark, indelible stain that can no longer be washed away. The pressure becomes a torrent. The discovery of the unmarked grave, combined with the growing chorus of survivor voices, makes the issue impossible for the Irish government to ignore. Activist groups like Justice for Magdalene's campaign relentlessly, demanding a state apology under formal investigation. The United Nations Committee Against Torture weighs in, condemning Ireland for its failure to investigate the decades of abuse. The wall of official denial is crumbling. Finally, in 2011, the government commissions an official inquiry, led by Senator Martin Michaelis. The Michaelis report is tasked with establishing the extent of the Irish state's involvement with the Magdalene Laundries. For nearly 2 years, a team of researchers digs through dusty archives, piecing together a history that had been deliberately obscured. They examine state records, convent archives, and interview hundreds of survivors. You follow the process, reading about it in the newspaper your cousin brings home. Each new revelation feels like a small piece of justice. The report finds that over a quarter of all referrals to the Laundries were made by or involved the state. Police returning escapees, courts sentencing women to the Laundries, social workers transferring girls from state-run orphanages. The evidence of state complicity is undeniable and overwhelming. The report quantifies the state's role, turning the whispers of complicity into cold, hard facts. In February 2013, the day the report is published, the nation holds its breath. The Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister, and Taoiseach, stands before the Dáil, the Irish Parliament. You watch on the television, your heart pounding. His voice is thick with emotion. He doesn't equivocate. He doesn't make excuses. He describes the Laundries as the nation's shame. And then he says the words you and thousands of other women have waited a lifetime to hear. He looks directly at the survivors, some of whom are sitting in the gallery of the Parliament, and says, I, as Taoiseach, on behalf of the state, the government and our citizens, deeply regret and apologize unreservedly to all those women for the hurt that was done to them, and for any stigma they suffered, as a result of the time they spent in a Magdalene laundry. Tears stream down your face. You are sitting in your cousin's quiet living room, an old woman now. But in that moment, you are the young girl who was condemned for nothing. It is a moment of profound, earth-shattering validation. The state, which had been your jailer's partner, is finally admitting its guilt. The shame, which you were forced to carry for so long, is finally being placed back where it belongs. The apology is more than just words. It is followed by the establishment of a redress scheme, a compensation fund for the survivors. It is a practical acknowledgement of the stolen labor, the lost lives. The process is bureaucratic and imperfect, but it is something. It is the state trying, however clumsily, to pay a debt that can never truly be repaid. A particularly poignant detail of this public reckoning is the creation of memorials. In Dublin, a beautiful memorial garden is established on the site of the last Magdalene laundry to close. It's a place of quiet reflection, with a sculpture featuring the names of the institutions and the words of survivors etched into the stone. It's a permanent, public acknowledgement that these women existed, that they suffered, and that they will not be forgotten. Similar memorials are erected in other towns. The architecture of containment is being replaced by an architecture of memory. The academic and public debate, however, does not end with the apology. A significant point of contention remains the role of the religious orders themselves. To this day, while expressing sorrow, the four main orders that run the laundries have refused to issue a full, unqualified apology for the systemic abuse. They have also been heavily criticized for not contributing more significantly to the state's compensation fund, despite the immense profits they made from the women's unpaid labor. This refusal remains a source of deep pain and anger for many survivors, who feel that complete justice cannot be achieved until the institutions directly responsible for their suffering take full ownership of their actions. The T.S. speech continues. He reads from the testimony of a survivor. The silence was the worst part of it. He reads, "In a way, the silence was a form of abuse. The words resonate deep in your soul. You think of the years of enforced silence in the refectory, the silent language of glances in the laundry, the silent grief for the babies taken away, the silent passing of the decades. The silence has finally been broken. It has been broken in the halls of Parliament, on the front pages of newspapers, in the conscience of a nation. Your story, once a shameful secret, is now a public truth. It doesn't give you back your youth. It doesn't erase the scars. But it means you no longer have to carry the burden alone. You are old now. Your hair is white. Your hands are twisted with arthritis. A permanent reminder of the thousands of sheets you scrubbed and pressed. You live a quiet life. You have learned to use the microwave. You enjoy the simple pleasure of watching television, of choosing what you want to eat for dinner. You have a small circle of friends, other survivors you met through a support group. You meet for tea, and you talk. You fill the decades of stolen silence with words. You don't talk about the worst of it. Some things are still too painful. But you talk about the small things, the taste of the thin stir about, the particular way a certain nun would click her rosary beads. The secret language of the laundry. You share a language that no one else can fully understand. In this shared history, you find a strange kind of comfort, a community built on a foundation of shared trauma. The memories are not gone. They never will be. Sometimes a particular smell, the sharp scent of bleach from your cousin's cleaning supplies, the smell of damp wool on a rainy day will transport you back in an instant. You are suddenly standing in the steamy heat of the laundry again. A young girl once more. Your hands raw, your heart filled with a cold, hard dread. These moments are like ghosts, passing through you and leaving a chill behind. You have learned to live with them, to acknowledge them, and then to let them pass. Your stolen youth, the life you might have had, is a phantom that walks beside you. You sometimes wonder about the boy from the butcher's shop, the one with the shy smile. Did he marry? Did he have children? You wonder about the career you might have chosen, the places you might have traveled. These are doors that were slammed shut on you, and you can never know what was behind them. This is a grief you carry quietly, a private mourning for a life that was never lived. This is the enduring legacy of the Magdalene Laundries. It is not just a historical event, it is a collection of individual lives, permanently altered. The compensation, the apologies, the memorials, they are important. They are necessary, but they cannot restore what was taken. The true cost of the laundries is measured in these quiet moments of reflection, in the phantom limbs of lost futures, in the chronic physical and psychological pain that so many survivors still endure. A final, Heartbreaking detail of this legacy is the search for lost children and mothers. To this day, thousands of people who were born in the mother and baby homes are searching for their birth mothers, and thousands of mothers are searching for the children who were taken from them. Due to the deliberately obscured and falsified records, these reunions are incredibly difficult. It is a vast human puzzle with most of the pieces missing, a testament to the system's final, most cruel lack the severing of the most fundamental human bond. Organizations exist now to help facilitate these searches, a modern attempt to heal a wound inflicted decades ago. The academic world continues to grapple with the meaning of this history. The debate is no longer about what happened, but about why, and what it says about Ireland as a nation. Was it a unique product of Irish Catholicism and post-colonial anxiety, or is it a more universal story about the policing of women's bodies? A story that has echoes in other cultures, and other times scholars argue that the Laundries are an extreme example of a patriarchal system's need to control female sexuality, a theme that is tragically timeless and global. The story of the Magdalene Laundries has become a case study in institutional abuse, state-church collusion, and the long, difficult process of transitional justice. You sit by the window, watching the rain fall. You are not the girl who was dragged to the laundry, and you are not the broken woman who was released. You are someone else now, someone who has been forged in the fire and has, against all odds, survived. You have a name, your own name, the one they tried to take from you, and you have a voice. You think of Eileen, the friend who vanished into the night. You hope she made it. You hope she found a life for herself. You hope she found some happiness. You like to think that somewhere out there, she is an old woman too, sitting by a window, remembering you. You will never know. The laundry was designed to erase connections, and it was brutally effective. But the connection you shared, that silent bond of solidarity in the face of overwhelming cruelty, is a memory they could never wash away. It is yours to keep. The story, in a way, is over. The gates are rusted. The official reports are written. The apologies have been made. But for you, the history is not in the books or the archives. It is in the marrow of your bones, in the map of scars on your hands. You close your eyes. The noise of the modern world fades away. And for a moment, you can almost hear it again, the distant, rhythmic, churning heartbeat of the laundry. The sound of your stolen life. You take a slow, deep breath, and you let it go. The sound fades. You are here. Now, in the quiet of your own room. You survived. Now, as the edges of our story begin to soften and blur, allow your own mind to drift. Feel the weight of the day begin to lift from your shoulders. The journey we took was heavy, but you are leaving it behind now, stepping away from the grey stone walls and into the gentle landscape of your own approaching dreams. The air around you is calm and still. Every breath you take is a little slower, a little deeper, drawing you further away from the waking world. Let the rhythm of your breathing be a soft, steady anchor in the quiet of your room. There are no more bells to answer, no more tasks to complete. There is only this moment of peace, this gentle descent into rest. You are safe. You are comfortable, and you are ready for a deep and restorative sleep. The end of the article. Good night.